welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate. Your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward. With our man right in the middle, it's Barry Saywitz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there. It is Tuesday. Guess what? We are going to talk some real estate. I am Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company and managing partner of Saywitz Properties. And if it's one thing that I've learned, I hope I've learned more than one thing, but certainly one thing that I've learned is to surround yourself with good people, get informed, make good business decisions. We're going to help people try and do that today and shed a little light on the legal side of commercial real estate. This is part one. I'm excited about the show because this is part one of a series of legal aspects of real estate, and I'm excited to have my old friend Ken Fields, partner, principal, lawyer extraordinaire with Greenberg Glusker in Los Angeles on the show. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Barry. I appreciate you having me, and hello to the listeners outside.
Yeah, so before we get going, I do want to do a shout out. It is 4th of July week. It is hot as heck in the entire western half of the United States. I feel like last week was the eastern half of the United States. This week we're getting it here on the West Coast. So for everybody out there, stay cool. If you're going to get supplies for 4th of July, I would suggest you go today, get your favorite beverage, get your hot dogs and your hamburgers, get it out of the way and get stocked up and get some sunscreen. So with all of that said, I want to talk some real estate. So Ken, most people don't know, but you and I go way back.
Yes, we do.
We were in the same fraternity at UCLA just a few short years ago.
Yep.
And for all of Ken's clients and his family out there, Ken usually was home and in bed by 10 o'clock when we had these parties back in college. I, on the other hand, stayed up late trying to figure out and plan the next party and make sure everybody got out okay. But Ken was always a good guy and on board. But so you, at UCLA, graduate, decide you want to go to law school. What was the drive or the passion to want to go to law school back in the day?
So actually, I made that decision in high school, believe it or not. I took a course in consumer law and economics. I really was not engaged at all in high school, found myself bored to tears. The teacher that was supposed to teach the course ended up having a reason to not show up. They sent in a substitute who was a first-year law student, taught a Socratic method similar to what he was doing in law school, and it was the first time I felt energized in school. So that was when I decided to go to law school.
And back in the day, that was a big thing, right? Being a lawyer, it still is today, right? I mean, it is a great profession. It is a respected profession. It is a profession for successful people and not an easy one for barrier to entry to get into with taking the bar and going to law school. But I feel like today, I mean, my son is in college. There are not a lot of kids who go, hey, I want to be a lawyer today.
No, a lot of times it's people who don't know what they want to do, and they say, hey, you know what, I can go to law school.
Right, I'll just keep going. I'll avoid reality.
Exactly.
Little do they know it's actually a bunch of work.
It's a whole lot of work. A little bit less today than it was when I came up, but it's still a whole lot of work.
And so you go to law school and then really stayed in Los Angeles, right? Stayed local and really what got you into the real estate aspect of the law?
So initially I thought I wanted to be a litigator. Always loved debate, loved to argue. And I started out at a big firm in my summer associate period. And they rotate you through departments. So you end up going through bankruptcy, litigation, and every other department. And I went through the real estate group, and I think I sold a sheep farm, if I remember correctly, as my first project. And I worked my way through college selling very high-end car stereos and loved closing deals. And when I got to the real estate side, I said, hey, this is closing deals.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that I'm working with the other side to try to come up with a common goal of getting a deal done as opposed to fighting all day long. And ultimately, I decided that was where I wanted to go. Plus, at the end of the day, my law degree is probably the best investment I've ever made, but it's an hourly job. I'm billing hours to people. And real estate is another opportunity, and by going into real estate law, that gave me the opportunity to invest in it as well.
Yeah, you have the best of both worlds. I mean, I say to people all the time, I go to court or I go to meetings, and then they say, hey, are you a lawyer? And I go, I wish I was. I could bill somebody for my time here today. But you can bill people, and then you can also make deals. Me, I'm in real estate. I work for free until there's a deal.
Yeah,
and so
that's absolutely right. Yeah.
You take the good and the bad.
I do, yeah.
So you get into the real estate world. Greenberg Glusker is one of the largest, most prominent law firms in Los Angeles, been around a long time. And your real estate group within the firm really does all different facets of the real estate side of things, true?
Absolutely. So Greenberg's, we've been around for 60 plus years. I joined the firm almost 15 years ago, and we've got a really deep bench in the real estate side. I'd say that our historical practice areas have been real estate and entertainment are what we're most well known for. We're now a full service firm with corporate, tax, employment, and pretty much any discipline that you want to get involved in, which has been great for me because at the end of the day, my clients have other needs, and I usually act as outside general counsel for my clients. So whatever they need, I now have access to. And it's a brain trust. It's a really high quality level of practice. We're on par with every one of the big national firms in the country, but at the end of the day, we're a smaller regional California focused firm that deals in the mid-market. We know our place. We're happy there. We do deals across the country, but our focus is here, and our clients and the people we deal with are very loyal as a result of it.
And it seems like the entertainment and the real estate do go hand in hand because the entertainment companies, the studios, they all have real estate requirements, whether that's leases or real estate that they own. And then the flip side is you have people in the entertainment industry who are wealthy people who then decide to invest in real estate and then have questions.
Absolutely. So we tend to focus more on the talent than on the studio side.
I see.
And absolutely, we definitely have clients that are either investing in deals or they're buying their mega mansions and they need help with that part of the practice. We usually don't get involved in residential other than the multifamily side. But for the clients who are doing big ticket home purchases, we definitely handle those.
Yeah, and safe to say, people in the entertainment industry have talent and are certainly talented people, but maybe not business savvy a lot of the times, and that's why they come to you.
Absolutely. Depends on the client, but certainly some are better than others. And, you know, usually they're very successful at what they do, or they just don't want to focus on it and they want to pay somebody else to handle it for them.
Right, which gets back to my whole thing of surrounding yourself with good people and getting people to do what they do that they specialize in and be part of your team.
Absolutely.
So in the course of your career, when we say real estate, I mean it's transactional, it's landlord, it's tenant, it's buyer, it's seller. And in the course of all of these dealings, I'm going to guess there are disagreements that come along from time to time. Absolutely. I know firsthand, right? Yes. So I guess my question for you would be, when you're representing either the landlord or the tenant, is the role, and really does it depend on the circumstances, is the role that you're a facilitator, you're trying to make the deal, is the role that we're trying to protect the client, is the role that I'm negotiating with somebody else's attorney or broker or principal or whatever the case is, and how does that go from your role in the transaction?
So it's all the above. Ultimately, you know, I can, from the protection perspective, I can draft the best documents on the planet and protect my client from every risk in the world. That deal's not getting done, and my clients hire me to get their deals done. Right. So the goal is, how do I facilitate the deal and move it forward while at the same time getting my client the best protection that they can and get them the best market deal that they can. So that involves a number of different things. First, I have to have a conversation with the client and figure out what their needs and wants are, so I know where I'm heading, what their business is, because if you don't understand the client's business, you're not going to have an opportunity to really generate the needs that they need to achieve in the documents that you're working through. And once we have a game plan, then we get to negotiating documents with the other side. Sometimes the client's involved in that. Sometimes they just say, "Ken, run with it and let me know when we're done." And we'll negotiate the deal, get it to a point where I feel like the client has gotten as much as they're going to get. Oftentimes I've got to explain to the client, you're not going to get what you want, or other circumstances, they don't want to push for something that I think they can achieve, and that I'm pushing them to achieve that.
And sometimes time is an issue, right? So you've got to balance trying to get as much protection as you can with the time frames you're dealing with.
Absolutely. Time kills deals. Yeah. We all know that.
Yeah. So that's going in. Then let's assume for a second either your client's in a real estate transaction and there's a problem, which it happens. And so then the question, I want to talk about the default side of the equation for a second, and then I'm curious what are some of your what you're seeing in terms of the flavors of the month as far as disputes. But tenant doesn't pay their rent, tenant's got a problem with the landlord for the property or something that the landlord's doing, landlord's got a problem with the tenant in terms of how they treat the property or them not paying rent, and it gets to a point where you have a dispute. And so certainly if you don't pay the rent, you go through the eviction. I guess my question for you is on the eviction side of things. I know during COVID there was eviction moratoriums. Nobody really wanted to evict their tenant because there was nobody standing in line, but we're past that now. And as a landlord myself, look, if you can't pay the rent, either get out or, and just let me rent it to somebody else who can pay. At some point, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, this is not going to work out.
Yep, absolutely. So on the landlord side, it depends on a couple of different things. One, how hot is the property? Are there other people in the background that want to take it on? So if we're dealing with an office default in today's market,
Right,
it's
tough.
a very different conversation than it is in the industrial, retail, or even the multifamily side. So the first question is, what are your options for re-tenanting the space when you get the space back? And if the options are weak, then the question is there any deal that can be made with the tenant? Are you above market? Does it make sense to drop back down to market
Right.
because you're going to end up there anyway at the end of the day? So, you have to have that kind of business discussion with the client to try to figure out whether there's a practical solution other than litigation.
And whether they have capacity to pay. Right?
Absolutely, and whether they have the capacity to pay. And oftentimes when the client or the tenant comes in and says, I can't afford to pay the rent, the first question is, that's great. Let's sign an NDA, send me your financial statements and
Right.
and copies of your bank statements, because I want to see if what you're telling me is the truth.
And if you pulled up in a brand new Tesla, then I'm going to know you're kind of full of it.
Exactly. So that's part of the conversation. And usually with the landlord side, my answer is, guys, this may go somewhere on a settlement context. It may not. Start the UD process. I'd rather be ahead of the curve in terms of timing than wait. Filing UD is not that expensive. The process can get more expensive depending on whether the tenant fights you or not. But I'd rather be in line for what's often going to be a lengthy court situation than waiting a month and a half to find out I have to file anyway.
Yeah, I agree. And plus, it puts pressure on the tenant to step up and have a serious conversation.
Absolutely. And then on the tenant side, it really depends where we are on the tenant. I mean, I'm going to tell them to go out and get a broker and get a feel for what the market is. And, can they assign or sublease the space? What's the landlord's likely runway going to be to relet the space? And then once you have that information, either sublease or assign. The downside to that is you're still on the hook on the lease. So having the financial information about where the landlord's going to go gives you an opportunity to go back to the landlord and discuss, can we negotiate an early termination of my lease?
Yeah, and whether the landlord has a better ability to market it or in conjunction with you.
Exactly. And do you have a personal guarantee? Because that's going to change the equation.
Which is key, right? I mean, that to me is really the determining factor of how the conversation goes. Because without a personal guarantee, they could go chase your company, and if your company's not doing well, there's a good chance it may go out of business. And a lot of tenants threaten, I'm going to go bankrupt, and then you'll get nothing. Right?
Absolutely. Happens all the time. And, it's easy with a single location operator. It gets a little more complicated when you've got a tenant who has multiple locations. They just have one space that's not doing well. That's a different conversation.
Right. But if you've got the guarantee, for those folks out there who don't know what the guarantee is, that means you personally guaranteed it, which means your stocks, your savings, your car, your home is all on the line.
Absolutely.
And your wife or your husband not going to be a happy camper if you messed up on the business and sacrificed their ability to live in a nice home. And from the landlord's perspective, nobody wants your home. They just want you to settle up and pay.
They want to get paid.
Yeah.
All the landlord cares about is getting the space back and getting their money.
And from a commercial perspective, in terms of the eviction from start to finish, COVID aside, I mean, in today's world, isn't it really a 75 to 95 or 120 day process in totality?
Generally speaking. I mean, it depends what the tenant does and whether they fight you and stay until the last minute. Technically, you should be able to get it done in 45 to 55 days.
It's pretty quick.
But that's assuming that everybody is on fire, and on top of that, that the court and the marshal's office is going to get out there quickly enough to handle the eviction, and that just doesn't happen. So you're usually looking at up to 120 days, and that's hoping that the tenant doesn't file bankruptcy, because that just throws the whole
Well,
thing
that
into
would
a
certainly
complete
extend
delay.
it. But it seems to me like if you're not doing well, it's not like it's a residential and you have no place to live. You just shut down the business and then get out of there. And if you do have furniture and fixtures that are worth some percentage of what the value is, you would try and sell whatever you could to get whatever money you can.
Absolutely. And California is not a landlord lien state, so unless the landlord has created lien rights in its lease, they don't have the right to take your personal property.
Yeah. So so do you see a lot of those commercial evictions now? I mean, people complain cost of living, inflation, wages. There's still some bad things going on in the economy, but it seems to me like certainly not as much as it was before.
Definitely not. I mean, we're definitely seeing UDs just because we always do. A lot of my clients have in-house legal departments, so they handle the UDs in-house, or they're using much smaller firms than ours to handle the UDs. We get involved in some, mostly larger transactional to deals where it's either a large industrial space or a large retail space. And we actually have a really talented paralegal who handles a lot of our unlawful detainers, so we're able to do them efficiently, but it needs to make sense.
Yeah.
And usually, again, I'd say we've seen an uptick on the office side. Not so much, because landlords are begging and pleading for money as opposed to getting their space back to be able to rent them to nobody.
But you don't have restaurants going out of business and distributors and industrial guys going out of business like
Not
there was
a
in
lot.
COVID.
Not like we saw in COVID.
And so,
And on the industrial side, COVID was a boon to the industrial world.
of course, and today the market's still very tight on the industrial side. So if you did go under, landlord likely could rent it pretty quick and likely for more money.
Absolutely.
So, as an alternative to suing and throwing people out, those are all like negative energy kind of things. You do have the process of arbitration and or mediation as part of trying to get some kind of resolution, which assumes the two parties actually want to talk, as opposed to delay or argue. And you guys get involved with that stuff as well, right?
Absolutely. So I'm not a litigator. So usually when my clients get involved in arbitrations or litigation, I bring in one of my litigators, and I'm involved strategically rather than the day-to-day litigation side of it. But it's someplace that we have a large conversation about, is there a path to settlement before we go down that road? Because ultimately, whether it's arbitration or litigation, if there's a quick path to settlement, it's always going to be in the best interest of the client. Because ultimately, the first person who starts making money in a litigation arena is the lawyer.
Right.
And as much as I love to put my kids through college when they were still in college, I'm more interested in keeping money in my clients' pockets and helping them with their deals.
And it's a bleed. I mean, and sometimes there's just no way to stop it. Actually, I have a lawsuit's been going on since 2019, and I still can't get it resolved. And we have a court date that's like 9 months from now. It's been postponed 5 times because of COVID and bankruptcy and death and other things, and it's just a bleed. My advice out there would be, don't do it, right?
Yeah.
If you can, don't do it.
I have a 4-year litigation on a property I own in Atlanta. I know how you feel.
Yeah. So you stick it at the bottom of the pile, try and go on to something else that's more productive. But in the arbitration and the mediation process, I feel like both parties have to want to try and make a deal, but are having a tough time getting there, or the lawyers being difficult on one side, or the client is being difficult on one side, and the arbitration or mediation scenario is an opportunity for an unbiased third party to come in and tell you, hey, here's where I think your case stinks, or here's the holes that you do have, you should take less.
Absolutely. So the arbitrator or mediator's job is to arbitrate and mediate. That's
to
why
talk
they're
you down,
called what
right?
they are. It's to talk their people down, tell people what the realistic options are in terms of where they think the case is going to go. They feel out both sides, try to figure out where the room is for settlement. And a good arbitrator, a good mediator is going to push like hell to try to get you there.
Yeah.
And, it can be less expensive than litigation, not always, because arbitration has become more expensive than it used to be. And, one of the things that pushes people toward arbitration and even mediation today is, in California at least, you can't have a pre-trial contractual waiver of a jury trial unless you agree to go through arbitration or mediation.
Right. And then sometimes it's a formality because the parties really don't agree, and we just do it as a waste of time to satisfy the court. Yeah. But in a real scenario, the arbitrator's goal is really, I feel like, to talk both guys off the ledge. And you're paying somebody that's a third party to try and get the two parties together.
Absolutely.
And if you walk away from it unsuccessful, you wasted an entire day or more of pitching your case, and then it's just more money, and you're right back to suing.
Absolutely. Some people view it as free discovery, which is a bad way to go into it. Yeah. If that's what you're looking for, it's not going to settle at arbitration or mediation. But for people who actually want to get to the end of the day, it's a great path.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about something more positive than the legal stuff. So on the transactional side, where are you seeing the market? Are there more transactions going on now, or has it really slowed down because the interest rates have ticked up? There really is, I feel like there's less volume. On the industrial side, there's less vacancy, so there's just less deals. On the office side, there's less volume because there's just not a lot of activity. And the interest rates are keeping people from making deals.
Absolutely.
I'm curious your thoughts.
So, it's interesting. Retail, of all things, has been kind of a sweet spot. There's been a big increase in retail leasing and retail transactions. Pricing has solidified and gone up. So retail's been kind of a bright star.
Yeah.
Industrial, look, it was so insane during the COVID years that there was no way momentum was going to be maintained. And there was a lot of development that went on. So, for example, in the Inland Empire, there's excess space, and we're going through a period of less building and absorption right now. And until that goes on, until that process is completed, we're going to see a little bit more movement in rents. But there's still a lot of transactions going on the purchase and sale side. Most sellers are kind of taking a step back because with interest rates where they are, buyers are expecting price discounts and the sellers aren't ready to give them yet. So unless there's an opportunistic sale where they have to sell,
Right.
or they have so much built-in gain that they want to take their chips off the table, that transactional side is definitely slowed down. So
Yeah, it feels. I feel like the seller says, "Hey, if interest rates come down, right?" And earlier in the year, everybody's going, "Oh, it's coming down, it's coming down." Here we are, it's July, nothing's coming down, and it's not coming down, right? And
people are saying we may see one in September, but
Yeah,
I'm not holding my breath yet.
no, I'm not betting on it. And even if there is, it's not enough to move the needle for buyer or seller to make the deal that much better to get a deal done tomorrow versus today. I feel.
Totally agree. So from a buyer's perspective, look, if you have the capital and you need to place the capital, do the deal. Eventually, you're going to be able to refi into a more favorable interest rate unless things completely go haywire. But we're also seeing a lot of uncertainty in the political markets, a lot of uncertainty in the world
Yeah.
situations right now. So plenty of people are just standing on the sidelines and saying, I'd rather wait.
Yeah, and cap rates really have not moved. And I mean, on the office sector, yeah, but the problem is the cap rate doesn't move, the interest rate is higher, and so the buyer says, well, why would I do that, right? And in some instances, certainly on the industrial side and the multifamily side, I don't know what you're seeing in the deals that you're looking at or working on, but the cap rate is less than the interest rate,
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah.
And so you have an inverse relationship between cap rate and interest rate, which means the more money I go get a loan for, the worse the deal becomes.
Absolutely. So a lot of clients who are coming out of exchanges are obviously doing low loan to values, which makes the deals easier. A lot of my clients are either, they're either large family offices with a whole lot of cash, or they're REITs and they have access to the public funds markets, which is less expensive than what the normal buyers are having to pay. So those deals are still happening. And look, one of the uncertainties is what's going to happen with the office market and all these loans that are about to mature with owners that do not have the additional equity to satisfy the lender when it's time to refinance on a loan to value. So we have yet to see that debacle come our way.
And I feel like Los Angeles is really a prime target for some other wave of what happens with the office market. Number one, because there's a large volume of office space and still vacancy is very high. But also with traffic in Los Angeles, people don't want to drive to their office so much anymore. Yeah. A lot of people work out of their house or the hub and spoke of I have a main office in Century City and then I have branch offices in downtown, in the Valley, in the South Bay. Those also don't really work. And so people are trying to figure it out. So I feel like as leases roll, people will give back space or try and take less space or figure it out, which doesn't really help overall the office market at the end of the day.
Absolutely true. So, I mean, the smaller operators are still going to take their space because they need to go there.
Yeah, but the big chunks.
But the big chunks are going to get carved down a lot. You look at, lot of the market industry is saying that, occupancy rates are still X. And the answer is that's occupancy rates by lease. It's not who's actually in chairs in their office,
right,
which is a very different equation.
But then I look at it and I go, okay, that's LA, which is sort of its own animal, right? I mean, San Francisco also struggling its own animal for obvious reasons, same sort of concept, and completely overpriced at the peak. And San Francisco, in my mind, really has the highest swings in values from the .com to the .bomb to the what just happened to COVID and all of that stuff. And so you combine that with governmental restraints and other things, it's really big swings. Those two markets on the West Coast are really, I think, the most difficult and challenging markets. But at the same time, they do present opportunities if you're a savvy businessman. You just got to look for it.
You have to find them. I mean, look, people are buying hotels and converting them to industrial. They're buying office buildings and converting them to industrial, multifamily. You have to look at things creatively. And those of my clients who are doing that are really still finding opportunities. Those who are kind of locked into this is what I do and I'm just going to keep doing it.
Right, I want to chug along.
And
it's hard.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. And do you find that some of your clients, especially the family offices, and as people get older, it used to be that I get out of the multifamily property that I own because it's a management headache and there's turnover and there's costs and maintenance, and then I go sell that property and I do a 1031 and I go get into a Starbucks or a Walgreens or a Rite Aid or a 99-cent store. And then now some of those are not A, good deals, or B, even that safe.
Absolutely. So a lot of those clients are saying, look, you know what, I'll do an UPREIT transaction, which for the audience that probably doesn't know what that is, you contribute your property to a public REIT and you get shares in the REIT in exchange for contributing. So you offload your cash in what can be a completely tax-free transaction, or at least tax deferred, and you have no management risk on the portfolio, and you get the diversity that comes in doing that kind of deal. So that's one option. People are doing Delaware statutory trust.
Right,
They're,
the STs.
you know, they're doing TICs with syndicators who do TIC investments. There's so many ways to reinvest your assets. But I also have a lot of clients, myself included. I'm in an exchange, and I'm sitting here going, okay, I'm looking at a bunch of deals, and I'm probably going to take one down, but I'm also considering, do I pay the tax and move on, because having the cash in my pocket for when the market does start to show some drops in value, I'm going to be able to execute and realize a better result than I would by paying the tax.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, as you mentioned, the people who have to make deals because there's an event, a breakup, a divorce, a death, or whatever the case is, those are where the deals are. But the average deal, even when you find it, is hard to get people to take a really big discount. And you still have this disconnect, I feel like, between buyer and seller.
Absolutely. Loan to values are not what they were, so people need to come up with more cash.
Right. And I don't get the sense that the banking environment is going to change anytime soon in terms of rates dropping or loan to values, or even the government, who is keeping an eye on these banks, letting them do stuff that's a little more riskier outside the box.
Right, and as you look at interest rates popping up in CDs and bank accounts out there, and you say, okay, I can get 6% by putting my money in the bank, or I'm going to do a real estate deal at an 8% preferred return, why not do the bank? Because I'm sitting there with absolutely no risk. So
Yes.
That's a conversation that's going on. Syndicators are having to increase their preference to their investors as a result. So it's changing the market in a big way.
Yeah, no question. I mean, banks used to call and go, hey, you got any loans for me? And now they go, hey, you got any deposits for me, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just about every lender out there is saying, you want a favorable deal? I want $1 million, or
Right.
at least
That's
your
the
entire
new, right. That is
portfolio.
the new world, which is I lend you some money and you give me some other money to make up for it. right?
Exactly.
And if you don't have that, you really are limited.
Absolutely. Those with relationships are still able to play. Those who don't need to find somebody to help them make one.
Yeah, I always said, like, I never really own the property. It's always the bank who owns it, and they're behind the wall, making polite suggestions on
Absolutely.
what you should be doing.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we do as a lawyer when we're doing borrower work. It's how much can I keep the bank out of your back management side so you can lease and operate the building without having a whole lot of interference from your lender.
And do you see, I mean, I feel like the fix and flip, the value add kind of deals have really kind of gone by the wayside as well.
You know, I think the fix and flip have gone by the wayside. The fix and hold are still out there. So there are a lot of clients who are looking for opportunities where there's still some value add that they can buy, park their money, wait until they see some appreciation, and then exit when the time is right. But I'm not seeing nearly as many deals where I'm buying an asset for a 6-month hold and then I'm just going to flip it into the next deal. Even on the residential side, because residential softened as well, especially in the higher end markets.
Yeah, no question. I think you got to be 3 or 5 years out, and you got to be prepared to weather whatever that storm is at the end of the day.
Yeah, those with cash will always be okay.
So what do you think over the course of the next 6 to 12 months? I mean, it is an election year. In Los Angeles, really a lot of dynamics of different things going on, homelessness, minimum wage increase, right? All kinds of governmental regulations on the real estate side of things, and talk of more to come that are crazy, ridiculous rules, if you will. What do you think will be one of the key determining factors that impacts the commercial real estate market? It's a broad question, but is it interest rates? I mean, is it wages? Is it inflation?
I think it's all of those things. It's also, look, I mean, there's the mansion tax in Los Angeles. And
Right, that's a crazy, stupid one, too.
That people are sitting there going, okay, if I sell this asset, I suddenly have, you sell a $15 million building and you have a $700,000 and some odd LA mansion tax that you're faced with.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much money you've made. You could be losing money on the deal and you still have to pay the tax. So that's been an issue, and the Supreme Court said that the ballot measure that was supposed to go in November to potentially reverse it is not going on the ballot. So, look, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be doing something very different for a living.
Yeah.
But I think all of those things are going to impact the market. But probably right now, one of the biggest one is what's going to happen in the election. And, also what's happening in the world. You see what's happening in France and a lot of the other areas. And A lot of economies are in turmoil. China's dropped the spigot. There's no more money coming in. You look at I forget what the heck it's called, but the building across from crypto.com that's become a graffiti center,
Right.
as opposed to a potential development. There's a lot of risk out there. And those who are willing to take risk are going to take risks, and a lot of them are going to fail, but a lot of them are going to make a heck of a lot of money. at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
and I also don't feel like there's any sort of quick answer or movement in the market, right? I mean, in a hot market, people, they go and the deal gets done and they got to make the deal quick. I feel like the wait and see is a lot more prevalent.
It very much is. I mean, look, you and I have both been doing this for a long time. We've been through several cycles, and there's usually a buyer's market, a seller's market, a landlord market, a tenant market. I don't know where the heck we are right now.
Right, I agree. I agree. And if you look at different pockets, right? I mean, I would say retail landlord market, industrial landlord market, office tenant market, multifamily. You could say whether it's a buyer or seller market. I don't know. I mean, it depends on the deal, right? It really is a difficult thing to try and assess.
Absolutely.
And I feel like the uncertainty of where it's going is what keeps people away from making a deal and pulling the trigger.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And you also have the geographic issue. I mean, you look at the office market in general, it's dying. You look at Century City, it's still on
Booming.
fire.
Right. I agree. And if you, in Orange County, you look at the high-rise buildings, they have high vacancy, and they're looking at converting office space to medical or retail or other mixed uses. But then if you look at the low-rise buildings, much different story.
Yeah, and during COVID, those buildings were really hot because tenants had their own entrances to get in and out of their space. It was a very different desire on the tenant side. I don't know how all this is going to play out. I mean, I talked to some of my office landlord clients, and they all feel confident. But look, at the end of the day, developers are the most confident people on the planet. So.
And you got to have cash, and you got to have patience. And I guess we'll wait and see how it goes. I mean, that's why we do the show every week, trying to figure it out and try and get people some info that they can take home and use around the dinner table or whatever dice rolling they're going to do.
Absolutely.
So, but listen, I appreciate you coming on the show. It always goes quick, and it has. And Paul's waving at me that he's got to go to breakfast and he's getting hungry.
And I have to drive back to Los Angeles.
Yeah. So I appreciate all the thoughts and all the input. In terms of if people want to get additional information on you or the firm, what's the website that they can go to?
So the website is www.ggfirm.com. So that's as in Greenberg Glusker firm.com. You can also do greenbergglusker.com, but most people like the shorter version. And then you can just plug my name into the search features, either Ken or Kenneth, and I'll pop right up.
Got it. So in terms of legal needs, whether it's real estate, estate planning, corporate litigation, otherwise, it's all the above, right?
Absolutely. So we handle pretty much everything. So if clients have a need, I'm usually outside general counsel for almost all of my clients. So whatever they need, they call me up. I mean, sadly, if the kid gets in a drunk driving accident, I get that phone call. We don't do that kind of work, but we have relationships pretty much everywhere to make that
That's
happen.
what I tell our clients. Look, you call me, and if I don't know the answer, I'll try and make it up.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
well, good.
Or
Ken
find
Field-
somebody else to.
Right, or I'll find somebody else who knows what's going on, and I'll push off to them.
Yeah.
Well, Ken Fields, I appreciate you coming on the show. Best of luck to you and much continued success to the firm, to your business, to your family, and always good to see you.
Much appreciated, and it's great to see you.
Yeah. So I'm Barry Saywitz. I want to give a big thanks and a shout out to all the folks here at OC Talk Radio, as always, for making the show happen. If it's Tuesday, it's real estate. We will be back here talking more real estate next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.